got your attention now, don't I?
This is the Black Rifle Coffee Podcast.
My name is Sam Rogers. I am a U.S. Army veteran, Afghan war veteran, small business owner, and a veteran policy advocate.
Love it. So anyway, we were talking. Sam, good to have you here, man. I see you're like fully caffeinated.
This is a basic white girl flavor, and I'm like living for it, man.
It's so good.
It's so good.
It's so good. Like the caramel vanilla. And I typically don't drink a lot of them because they have some sugar in them. But all my buddies, like I think those are given. We have a refrigerator at Joe's podcast, and I think he might chug like 10 of those before the show sometimes. So this guy's awesome. So this is a SIG 365.
Yeah.
They did the Lower Allegiant Holster Company. These guys,
nice.
They did this, but he's been doing like magazines and new.
It's clean.
Custom holsters for my SDIs and 365s. I bought 20 365s for the IPO.
Yeah.
To give out to employees.
It's the most underrated bang for buck carry gun, I think, on the market. It's really incredible in performance and cost. It just can't be beat, man.
It's awesome. And now I got one in woodland camo. So this is what happens and the funny thing is with this guy is he keeps trying to give me shit. And he's like, hey man, like I feel bad sending you stuff. I'm like, no, like I'll pay for it. Dude.
Right.
Like I'm a big boy. I got a checkbook.
My big boy.
I can put my Oshkosh Pagashas on, man. I can afford a fucking, I can afford a fucking holster, weirdo.
And congratulations on the IPO, by the way. That's huge. It's really exciting, man.
It's a lot of guys talk about it. And I mean, I still think it's surreal. It's awesome. Now the work begins. I just had my first earnings call last week, and there's like zero stress. People always think like this is going to be stressful. Oh my gosh, it's going to change the company. I'm like, hasn't changed the company.
You built a good team,
anything. Right? Yeah. Like we have a really good C-level team. We've got, great people that work here in the company. We've got a mission. Like,
right.
It hasn't changed. Like it's just a little bit more reporting as far as like, but the planning hasn't really changed. Like nothing's really changed. I was kind of, I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, oh fuck, what's going to happen? I'm like, not really. It's all the same. It's good to see you, man. It's good. Where'd you come in from? AZ?
No. It came in from Wisconsin. So
you flew all the way out from Wisconsin?
I did.
Holy shit. Jeez, man.
I would almost say your mountains, I think Wisconsin's beautiful. I love Wisconsin, but the snow-capped mountains surrounding Salt Lake City it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is.
It's like therapeutic just staring at it.
Yeah. Is that where you're originally from?
Milwaukee area.
Okay.
So I grew up there after I did a couple semesters of tech school because my mom wouldn't sign the age waiver to join the Army.
Right.
I joined the Army.
Hey, go let that dumbass out, will you please? I knew he was going to fucking do that.
So I joined the Army 2005.
Yeah.
I went to Benning, then Huachuca for Interrogator school, and eventually decided to come back to Wisconsin.
So how long were you in?
I did 8 years active duty.
Yeah.
I was at 2nd Infantry Division first in 5th Stryker Brigade.
Right.
Which was my first unit, and it was the best unit. It was like the best company, amazing leadership, all really interesting people, in the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. And, for better, for worse, I definitely just thought that was the whole Army.
Right.
It was this like perfect mixture of, my first sergeant was like a group support guy, understood the importance of, for a bunch of pogues, right? Because we're intel guys, like being able to integrate into line units, into soft elements, so that we could, do our force protection job, right? Because if you can't integrate, if you can't maneuver, if you can't communicate, if you can't operate weapon systems, comm systems, you get left behind on the fob, which means that you're not providing the force multiplication service that you're there for.
Right.
And so it was really great. I would say I was probably a mediocre soldier until I got there and really started kind of seeing all these things and getting these unique training experiences. Then I deployed for the first time in 2009 to the Kandahar surge in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I was there.
So I was all over Kandahar City, Arghandab River Valley, finished the tour out in Boldak on the Paki border.
Yeah.
And that was I grew up on Black Hawk Down, right? That was like my post 9/11 movie, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't have really any military family, so I didn't know anything about the Army. But 9/11 happened. I was probably 10 minutes late for school, so I was going to skip the whole day. And I remember pouring this big ass bowl of some kind of cereal. It was probably Fruity Pebbles, knockoff Fruity Pebbles, big generic bag, and sitting down and turning on the TV right as the second plane came in. And it was a life-changing moment for me where I think it might have been the first time I felt real anger, real drive to do something. And I wanted to be an air marshal at first, which is a silly job for a 15-year-old or whatever to want to be, but it was just the logical thing, right? It's well, there's someone on that plane, pulling the trigger a few times. Maybe this could have been prevented. So maybe I could be that guy, in the future. And with the advent of the internet, I just started calling around to random federal facilities and fed off, and they're stop crank call. This is the FBI. Stop calling us. And I'm but I don't know anything about this. So I'm just how do I be that guy? I would just call and hey, how do I be that guy? And eventually some lady took pity on me, I think, and put some guy on the phone, and he's well, you got to go to college, are you good at school? And I was oh, no, I'm not. I'm really bad. And he's well, it's a lot, most Fed law enforcement guys, they come out of college, or he's we are taking guys from military, intel programs. Right. You should consider that. And I was oh, I never thought of that. That's a good idea. Because I could go, I could go fight a little bit, and then I could go do my then dream job of being an air marshal. So that's kind of how I found my way into the Army.
So what year was that? 2005? When you joined?
When I joined, yeah. Okay. So I was finally 18. I didn't need my mom's permission to join. Yeah. So I was off to the races.
So what MOS was that?
It was 97 Echo originally, then 35 Mike. So it started as Interrogator pure, and then Human Intelligence Collector, which was more of a blend of some of the other human disciplines, strategic debriefing and military source operations. And that's really where I found my calling. I don't have the weird personality defects that make people like interrogations. Right. It's wasn't really my thing. Yeah. Although it's exciting to do tactical questioning on objective and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think I've always thought that was the most. So when you capture somebody, the information.
Hold on. Yeah. I think this is something that I think everybody will find fascinating. Yeah. Because nobody understands the regulations regarding tactical questioning and interrogation. They always think that what happens, and this is what I've gotten a lot from a lot of people, so you can dispel a lot of myths right now, which is they would think that we would hit an objective and then just be full of Al-Qaeda everywhere with bomb suits on and then we'd roll them all up and then we'd start waterboarding them. That's literally what their image is of what happens. I'm yo, dude, that doesn't happen. I mean, maybe early on in the war,
or when frustrated, untrained personnel,
for sure,
right?
But by the time Iraq, for me at least, was a fairly organized and orchestrated war, none of that happened. So explain the rules of the road when it comes to tactical questioning as much as you can.
So
I think it'd be fascinating. For people.
So a lot of it depends. And again, I am not even the expert because
you're a bigger expert than I am and most people.
Right. I didn't like interrogations. I got certified every deployment. But so essentially, tactical questioning is like very basic, direct, like where's the rest of your element type questions. Like which couch are the weapons hidden under? These are direct, simple, non-manipulative questions where you're relying on essentially the shock of capture.
Right.
And the battle that has recently occurred, right? For people to just answer those questions. Real formal interrogations are like running systematic approaches and like trying to do deep dives into their backgrounds and all of this stuff to elicit information of value. And that's another key differentiator between law enforcement interrogations and military intelligence interrogations. A lot of people think that they're the same. But like for law enforcement, the goal is to elicit a confession, right? And then it's like, boop, done, pass it off to the DA or prosecutor, whatever. My job is done. In the intelligence community, the goal is, we don't care about a confession. The goal is to collect tactically important, pertinent information or strategically valuable information, how these groups organize, what they do, how they communicate, things like that. I didn't like it for a couple of reasons. One, I don't actually enjoy I don't enjoy adversarial interpersonal communication. I really like collaborative problem solving. I like building teams. I like working with people. And so for me, the military source operations part, which is like, finding and recruiting and training assets was infinitely more fulfilling.
Right.
Because when you capture someone, like when you guys would roll somebody up, in my mind, there's like a stopwatch that starts, right? And every single thing that person knows is becoming old.
Yeah.
And the longer it goes on, the less valuable it is, right? Which is the goal of like these interrogations is to like get that stuff quicker. But I was never really into the mind game piece of that. And with military source operations, you're building networks that provide continuously up-to-date assessments of what's going on, and helping you solve problems on the battlefield, whether it's for your commander, for partner forces, for a wide range of different organizations. I love that. It was very dynamic. And
so, is your first deployment as interrogator, or was it a human guy?
It was as a human guy.
Okay,
but and we did some of both, but I didn't work in a detention facility because I was pretty good at my thing, which I think was literally based on me being able to make people laugh.
Yeah.
That was my cope growing up, dealing with hardship as a kid, right? Is humor. And so like I would go into these meetings where the company rolls up this village, and we go in to meet with the village leaders, and everyone's like so fucking tense. Because there's like 50 dudes with machine guns and missiles and stuff all over your village. Like there's a lot of tension there. Yeah. And, everyone's very serious and on edge. And, and I was the guy who'd be like, now, of course, this was before like those 12 Navy SEALs shot bin Laden.
Right.
And, but I'd be like, where's Osama bin Laden? and like these guys, they like look at each other and they like look back at me, and I'd be like, is he fucking over there?
Is he retarded?
And then they're just like looking at each other, and I'm like, is he under one of these blankets? Dude, and then like I would start laughing, and they would start laughing, and it would just roll in, man. And I could kind of diffuse the tension, make friends, build relationships, find shared outcomes that we wanted to achieve and work together on those. And then later that kind of evolved. I got some translators to help me deconstruct Afghan narrative humor so that I could write jokes that would crush an entire jirga.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Really? So tell me some Afghan jokes.
Okay. So admittedly, what I would do, I deconstructed it wrote out like how to build them.
Yeah.
And then I would take extremely insensitive American jokes and I would rewrite them pointed at the like opposing sub-tribe or whatever for the people
like
I was talking to.
or something.
Right. And just like, and I could put a whole room on the floor.
Yeah.
And, these guys would just spend weeks calling me, trying to come meet with me, talk to me about stuff. And I really enjoyed that part of the work. And I was able to achieve demonstrable force protection security outcomes, man. Like, and in that year, my unit had 42 guys killed. We had over 200 amputees. It was a fucking rough tour.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was both helped me deal with that, but also, my second tour was in a unit I affectionately refer to as Mogadishu. And they were a traditional intel unit that, spent a lot of time playing Xbox on deployment and were extraordinarily adverse to going outside the wire.
Right.
And, for me, it was like, okay, when the units we're attached to are taking casualties, I can't look at myself in the mirror unless I'm spending like 20 hours a day doing every single thing that I possibly can to disrupt those networks, to gain control of the battlefield in the ways that I can contribute.
Right.
And so I got out of the Army after that deployment, after that second one.
What year is that?
12, 13. Yeah. That was Panjwai Zari region. So I got out after that. Tried college for a little bit.
How'd that pan out?
I was I went to a school that said online that they accepted joint service transcript credits, a state school. Mm-hmm. I found there that it was kind of a bait and switch. They gave me like 4 PE credits out of like my 100-something service transcript credits.
Yeah.
And I was
Did you have a language?
No. But I did all of like the advanced human schools. Yeah. Like, it'd be like
there's a lot of school. Yeah.
ASOT 3 equivalent on the POG side.
Right.
And did that stuff. But so I was kind of frustrated because I'd wanted to only spend maybe a couple years in undergrad figuring stuff out. I was doing business school at first.
Right.
And then kind of rage quit and went back to Afghanistan, third time.
Did you join back up?
No, I got offered a job at working for the Army as a operations officer.
Oh, okay.
For a SMU detachment up there. And I think too that, I struggled with a lot of survivor's guilt after my first tour. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of my going back there was I don't really know what I was looking for, man. Maybe like redemption or revenge. I don't know. Death.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I don't know. It's it's weird to think about looking back, but I wasn't finding it. Between my first and second tour, I had a suicide attempt, which, I just kind of dealt with on my own.
In the Army?
In the Army.
Yeah.
My dog actually attacked me and it's like super weird.
Wow.
Wouldn't let me blast myself.
That's nice.
It's very nice.
Good, yeah, that's a good dog.
It's a good dog. Yeah. It's a good dog. Yeah. It's like never a peep out of him otherwise, ever before, ever after. But, which I appreciate.
Yeah, that is nice.
It's good looking out.
Well, I think a lot of guys, struggle with survivor's guilt and, because it's guilt, right? It's guilt of overwhelming proportions at times, especially if you've dealt with a lot of, death and amputation, a lot of significant injuries. I think that from 2000, but definitely from like 2005 to 2009, that's what kept me going back to Iraq over and over again. And it wasn't as if I was having like a tremendous time. I was like, well, I'm just, I'm going to do this until I'm dead or until I've got, a loss of leg or arm that provides me, legitimate reason not to be here. So then I was like,
yes,
but then it never happened. Thank goodness, right?
Right.
Which was like, a lot of people thought, well, that's just like, you're an adrenaline junkie or whatever it might be. And it's like, it's not really. Most of my adult life was was either in Iraq or Afghanistan because it was a comfortable shoe for me to wear.
You're good at it.
I don't know. I don't know if I was ever good at it. I think I was capable, which at that point in time, the wars needed just capable men. So, but then, there are a lot of things that I hated about it. Like I just fucking hated about it. Like, my experience there was like very, there's a lot of very transparent issues that I could see, especially Afghanistan. I saw it in Iraq, but I cared less in Iraq for some reason.
Right.
I don't know what it was. I just cared less about it. The fraud, waste, and abuse. The government just like direct fraud, waste, and abuse. And it really, by the time I got to Afghanistan, it looked like this is just an expenditure of taxpayer dollars through. And when I say that, it's like they're going through the exercise of just transferring wealth from taxpayer to military industrial complex.
Right.
And I'm a warfighter. I believe in killing people.
Right.
I'm not a pacifist. I just think there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And when you have corporate greed that interferes with, we'll call it mission success.
Right.
Like the two biggest things that are fucking problems, corporations and lawyers when it comes to war. Like they can both eat a fucking dick.
I just remember being in a training school, and it was like 11. This was between my first and second tour when was it 11 or 12 they killed bin Laden?
I don't know, 12 I think.
Yeah.
No, because it was on the 10-year anniversary of right around that same time.
So it would have been 11. All right. And I like remember looking at the guy next to me and being like, I'm really glad I got to go fight in Afghanistan before it was all over.
Right.
Because that was really the farthest you could stretch the reason that the American people sent us to Afghanistan, right? That the American people agreed to participate in this conflict was like, the vast majority of the objectives set out were won on the ground probably in the first like 4 months, and then, so like, if you're going to stretch goal it, it's bin Laden. And then we achieved that. And then, I went 2 more times, and my third tour in particular, man, was at probably the highest access level that I had been at before. And when I was a sergeant, then a staff sergeant, my previous tours, a lot of it's like, okay, grand strategy. Yeah. Like I get that because I read a lot, but like that's out of my bubble. That's not my problem. Sure. I got to worry about my squad, my guys.
Above my pay grade.
It's above my pay grade. And then when I was there, I realized that it did not exist, and that we were, and to quote a GO who was kind enough to be frank with me, my first tour with kids as well, which was very weird.
Yeah.
Because it changes all the cowboy math.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't. It's very strange. I had a close call, and for us, it's like me and another guy driving around the city, by ourselves. So there's like not a lot of fucking wiggle room. And I was kind of talking about it, and I was like, what is it that we are doing here? And, he was like, we're protecting each other, and we're spinning our wheels until the American people decide we've had enough of this. And I was like, dude, I don't know if I can die for that.
Right.
So I resigned, I came back. And then it was the challenge of like, okay, you want to talk about survivor's guilt before. Now I'm like, I literally just walked away from this one value that I added to the fellow warfighters, which is force protection, network disruption. And so I was trying to find a path to fill my cup. My wife recommended I get out. She's like, I can't see you sitting in an office, man. You should probably not be a supply chain guy because you're going to drive me crazy. And you. I changed to pre-law and really just started I was like, I'm going to get back in touch with my roots, what I'm good at, which is building teams, collaborative networks, trying to solve problems. And I was like, I'll just use kind of college as a test ground to see what works, what the crossover is between policy, fixing bad policy. And so it was very effective. And like, I built a large student veteran community. We got a couple of laws passed to fix what was wrong with higher ed for vets in Wisconsin. It was fulfilling. got involved in the VA healthcare fight, around 18 to get the VA Mission Act passed, which is very exciting and fulfilling.
What was that?
That was gave veterans access to urgent care in their communities, and most importantly, compelled the VA to provide referrals outside of the VA if they couldn't provide those services. And that's been under attack since, post-election, which is a fight we, have been participating in as well. But so that for me was like trying to continuously build communities, particularly for younger vets getting out, where I could connect them to fulfilling work, connect them to fulfilling fights to get in, right? Because we do like to fight. And
and there are the right fights, and then there are the wrong fights. And I think I was reading some article it was several months ago that it was either the Washington Post or the Times might have put out, and they were talking about how veterans are inclined to join groups in like their online subgroups and things like that. And a lot of these guys can be switched on to more of the extremist types of groups.
Yes.
And I think it's strange, but it makes sense. Like one of my friends was, he was there on January 6th in the Capitol. He's one of the 20 plus guys that were actually rolled up on that. Oh. I went through the Q course with him. I worked at the agency with him. He's like friend.
Right.
And I was shocked. I was like, whoa.
An extremely intelligent, high performing guy, right?
Yeah. But the other thing is that the other thing I think that people need to take into account is like, I've known him forever. And, I don't know how many IEDs the guy's gone through. I don't know what type of brain trauma that he's gone through, but he's obviously not thinking clearly to have done what he did.
Right.
And so I think about it from the context of brain injury and just cognitive function and how we as a society, especially the court system, a lot of people don't have this shared experience that we have.
It's vocational, right? It's a weird thing that it's the only culture that's essentially only vocational,
correct.
Right? Maybe law enforcement, fire has some of that, EMS,
sure.
But it's not the same because you don't live with those people 100% of the time.
Live with them 100% of the time. You have this, and then you have a galvanizing, extreme, emotionally intense event like combat, where most of these people become closer to you than family because you've relied on them for your life. And especially if you've had, parents or peers that have failed you in your life, then you rely on these people more than you ever have for any other family member. It's, combat is one of those things that when you have a connection with other combat veterans, it also translates across national identity, because I can talk to a guy from the UK or from Denmark or wherever it is. You name the country,
right? And
we all have this same shared experience, especially if we've walked the same ground.
Right.
It's this binding element to our DNA that it's irrelevant as to where you came from or what your background
everything
is.
Else is peripheral.
Yeah.
Right.
It's because we've all done it. And it's not like it's a fucking recreational experience, right? Like, oh my God, I've been bungee jumping too. We should be in a bungee jumping club together.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's not Woodstock, man. It's a little different.
It's a little bit different. And
I mean, and I think the post-Afghanistan refugee efforts indicate that. Sure. Like I'm like best friends for life now with like a bunch of like British paratroopers that I stumbled across trying to help guys out, get out of country, and I'd never met them before, but we've been to the same camps. We've patrolled the same roads, and that experience is international. That's funny. I didn't really think about it like that.
Well, it's international. Like I was talking to Christian Craighead on the podcast, and he's a buddy of mine, the former SAS guy that went in and saved it.
Is that the mall?
Yeah.
Oh,
so he was
so fucking badass.
He was on a podcast, and he's a good buddy of mine. He's coming to work for Black Rifle now.
Awesome.
And but within 15 minutes, we were best friends. We were going to go do karate in the garage, and
get the nods on.
Yeah. And because it was like he named a city, I was like, oh yeah, you remember that place right here?
That's right.
You know, oh, you were there and I was here, and we could do not only the city but the place game. Like we can smell the same hot sand, right?
Right.
We know one another.
You both know what the uniforms in your old Tough Box smell like.
Yeah.
It's because it doesn't go away.
Doesn't go away.
Nah.
And I've been trying to have more like the special operations community. This is like the community that I came out of.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to have more conversations with concentric rings of the military community in order to paint a picture for people. This is the veteran experience, right? Like your experience is similar but different than mine. I had an electronic DJ, Guantanamo BAE. He was on.
I saw that
last week.
I loved it.
Dude, he's super fun, man.
Super fun.
And his experience is totally different than mine, right?
Right.
It's like he's like, man, it's kind of a dirtbag, like, you know, Guantanamo.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but I get it because dude joined the Navy who's super fired up, and then he got stationed in Gitmo.
Yeah, that's rough.
Like, fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, like that would suck. Especially if you're
getting stuck at Fort Riley, man.
Yeah, dude. And it's even worse because now you're like, you got to be around these guys like all the fucking time. Like at least I could go out and hunt people that were bad guys, right? Not protect them and then like make sure they get water and like fucking what that would do to your head as, you know, a 20-year-old or whatever it might be. And he's such a cool guy. Like he's awesome. Yeah. Like he's super fun. But he's
found his path too.
Yeah. Like he did his thing and then he goes off and he's like very successful. He's a really interesting guy. And he's living this totally separate and unique, cool life with this military experience.
Yeah.
We have a whole generation of GWAT guys that are doing that, to include you.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's so fun to talk, because we can talk about the same thing. Like you and I both agree, like Afghanistan was a shit show, right? We can agree. What you were talking about is like the strategic objectives. Yeah. And this is the thing I used to tell people. I still do all the time. I'm not telling you. I'm just telling you so we can talk about it, which is the lack of strategic objectives, clear, definable mission success criteria would have fucking solved Afghanistan in 180 days. Yes. In 6 months. Yes. If the United States would have laid it out and said, these are minimum success criteria. This is our exit criteria. This is what we need in order to withdraw our presence in Afghanistan or stabilize in order to, you know, fulfill our international strategic stabilization objective, whatever it might have been. Yeah. Then commanders could have been like, great guys, come down from the executive office. This is what we have to do. We got 180 days to solve this problem. Right. And we're going to just knock it out. Yeah. But they never fucking did that. Well, you know, we only spend about $1 billion on staff salary at the Pentagon a year. So, I mean. Only? Right. So, you know, you get your money's worth, I guess. But so, I mean, that also brings up another point, right? Which is like, for me as a liberty guy, you know, a liberty biased guy, maybe, who's like politically independent. I trend conservative on most things. Why? Why do you trend? Why do you think you trend? Just because, like, I think I don't see solutions on the other side. And I actually was apolitical when I was in the military, totally, because the political people that I met, particularly on the intel side of things, were always the people not doing any work. Correct. Right. And I hated that. And so I was like, you know what? Like this is not about me. It's selfless service. I'm supposed to be, you know, doing the job the American people are asking me to do. And I took that very seriously. And when I got out, man, and I was in college and I was trying to figure out my place, right? Which I eventually just kind of built by creating new things with groups of veterans, because there wasn't really a place for me. Right. But, you know, I went to a college Democrats meeting. Now, of course, it was like 2016. So they were in full on like full Looney Tunes mode. It was like,
there was like a college Democrats meeting and a college Republicans meeting right after it. And I was like, I'm just going to go to both and just see like what's cracking here.
Sure.
And it was extraordinarily toxic. Like it was like, I'm not going to get into it, but it was really.
You can get into it. There's no time. There's no time hack.
I know. But it's not important. It was so fucking off-putting. And I was raised by lefties. I just assumed because I care about people that I must be like a Democrat, right? Yeah. And I went to college Republicans meeting. There was a local talk radio guy there. Dan O'Donnell is a younger guy, and somebody at one point raised their hand and asked, like, about some kind of like, it was like a Sandy Hook truther thing.
Right.
And this guy just fucking eviscerated this dude in front of this huge group. He was like, it was a fucking horrific and unspeakable tragedy that our country suffered when those kids were killed. And anybody, like, I don't know if you're fucking with me or if you truly believe that, but if you do believe that, there's no place for you here or in the conservative movement. Get the fuck out. And I was like, holy shit. So where all these guys on this other team were feeding each other this poison,
yeah,
I was like, okay, there's some internal accountability mechanisms here.
Right.
And so I went to like a Reagan Day dinner in my county just to try, because I don't know anything, right? You know, right. I don't know what I don't know. So I go out there and I was like, I don't know if I'm in the right place.
Right.
And they're like, well, tell me what you think about a handful of issues. And I just kind of ripped through them. Mm-hmm. And he was like, this is like a coalition party. And it always has been. Right. So there's going to be a lot of people in here who disagree with you, but there's like a place for you here. And I thought that was constructive. I mean, later I found that, a lot of what the party focuses on is protecting incumbency, which I think is a missed opportunity because Republican elected officials only listen to the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. So like they're the people who should be holding them accountable. And so I spent about a year there and then departed for other projects where I felt like I could have a better impact. Got involved with the Afghanistan campaign in trying to articulate all these different issues that that we've touched on. The constitutional piece, right? Like the authorization for use of military force, which is like a declaration of war light. Mm-hmm. It's like a third of a page. And I'd recommend you look it up. It's tiny and it's kind of written in the past tense and talks about invading Afghanistan, breaking some shit, hurting some people, and sending a message is unacceptable. And that you can't come here and kill our civilians. And that has morphed into this. I mean, we've had military action in like 42 different countries around the world, justified by this Afghanistan invasion document. And for me, it kind of came to a head in 2018 when one of my soldiers was killed in Somalia with Third Group. And I was actually at the United Nations for like a summer program. That I met the Afghan ambassador there. Like he asked me to be his guest to the Security Council to listen to their Afghanistan war debate because they actually have one. Right. We don't. They had one like 2 to 4 times a year.
Right.
I watched all these European countries just talking past this guy. He's like, child mortality is super high. Fields like sanitation is poor. Like I need like the lowest level of educated healthcare professionals because like all these kids are dying. And they're like, we're going to rebuild your hydroelectric dam. And he's just like, we don't have people who can run a hydroelectric dam. He's like, they've blown it up twice. And like and he's like, I need babies to stop dying.
Yeah.
I need moms to stop dying in childbirth. I need people to like, this is what I need. And they're just like, yeah, word. It'll probably be easier to do that with electricity from this hydroelectric dam we're going to rebuild for you.
Right.
And I went from that to
or with this new cobalt mine.
Right.
We'll decrease child mortality with this new tritium nitrate mine or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
no, and I went from that to like, my guy's mom calling me, and she said, what are we doing in Somalia?
Right.
And I said, well, he's protecting people and he's killing bad guys.
Right.
It's like the canned answer.
Stamp. Yeah.
It's a canned stamp. And that's what they were doing. Mm-hmm. They're fighting Al-Shabaab. And she just said, okay, who do I think she said like, who do I call about that?
Right.
And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, so who did that? Voted for that. And I said, I did the E5 board answer, and I said, ma'am, I don't know, but I'm going to get back to you with the answer to that question. And, I was doing some con law courses at the time. And so I dig into this AUMF, and it's authorized under the 2001 Afghanistan invasion document. Nobody fucking voted for it.
Right.
Which means there's no one to hold accountable. And it's not to say that, that mission shouldn't have happened. It's just to say that none of our leaders have any skin in this game.
Right.
And they have to. Constitutionally, they have to. They have like three fucking things they're in charge of. It's the power to legislate, the power of the purse, and the war powers.
Yep.
Right? The only person who legislates is the majority leader. They don't do that. The purse has been empty for like 35 years. They don't do that. And they've essentially given the war powers upwards to whoever the president is at any given time so that they can kind of have their cake and eat it too. The massive defense force guys get to beat their chests. They go to the funerals. They take the Instagram photos. The anti-war people do the same thing, but it's like less than 10% of the people who signed that document, who voted for that, are even still in office. And so one of the things that we want to, these conflicts should be reauthorized every fucking 2 years. And they should have those demonstrable end states, those clearly articulated enemies. And the kids I went to college with who were, this has been their entire life. And these are the kids who think that the president should just like invade Ukraine.
Right.
And because it's normal to them. Mm-hmm. Like it's been their whole life. And that's the real risk that we're facing right now is an entire generation of new voters has grown up under the assumption that presidents just do all the war and there's no constitutional controls there.
Right.
Which means they'll make unrealistic decisions and there's no restraint placed on the military, which will always act in its best interest, which is why our founding fathers didn't say, listen, I want a military that is led by revolving door former general vet bros at, various appointment positions or contract companies. They didn't say that. It's supposed to be a civilian-led military for that reason. Because we have a lot of ego tied up in the things we do, in the sacrifices we've made, in the sacrifice our friends have made. And that shit can cloud judgment in a bad way. And so that's the kind of path forward I want to see, man.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see our congressional leaders engage, because when they have to sign their name on it, it becomes real. The things that happen become real, but it's not right now.
I think these are really prominent and important points. I think you're 100% accurate. They don't take responsibility because they don't want responsibility.
Yes.
Because if they take responsibility, they can be voted out.
Yep.
And that's not what the game they're playing. The game that they're trying to play is longevity. They want to be in the seat for as long as they can. I had the opportunity to talk to Rick Scott. He's going to be on my podcast pretty soon, the former governor of Florida. I had dinner with him. Like, look at how cool that is. I'm just there are times in my life where I'm like, man, I was like a dirtbag E7. Like now I'm having dinner with Rick Scott. But he's an incredibly intelligent person. And he's in Senate now. Yeah. We were talking about this and he's like, Washington is so fucked. Like, I don't know if he said that because he doesn't really have a lot of...
painted a picture with words.
Yeah. He used real words versus like me. He used real words. But he said it's just lie after lie after lie. He also said the executive office, regardless of administration, is just lie after lie after lie.
Right.
If you want to take accountability, the party doesn't even want you to take accountability. No. So then you'll be at war with the party.
Right.
So he's like, there's no way unless you have, and that's the underlying issue that we're running into as well, because now you have people that are just running for Congress or Senate so they can grow their Instagram following or whatever the fuck they're doing because they're dimwits.
Right.
They're literally if we were in a small village, they would be the village idiot.
That's right.
And now they're being elected and they're representing people. They definitely don't want any accountability because once again, once you sign your name to something,
right.
You're responsible for it. But you're exactly right. I was wondering about the military, and trust me when I say this, I don't disagree with military intervention regardless of the state, because
right.
if they pose a threat, we should be counteracting the threat,
yes.
whether that's through overt and direct action, or whether it's in a clandestine or economic. There's a combination of methods and tools that you can use.
Have you articulated the difference between those on your podcast before?
Between like overt and covert?
Yeah. Do you want to can I tell the elevator fart story?
Yeah, the elevator fart.
So one of my mentors in one of my schools is a CIA guy. Goes like one of the coolest guys I've ever met.
And he was a CIA guy. He was cool.
He was an enlisted Air Force guy in Vietnam.
Right. Okay. So he was actually prior service.
Very cool guy. Yeah, prior service guy. But he explained it like this. You're in an elevator,
right,
with a bunch of people, and you cut one loose. It's loud. It's wet. The cheeks are slapping. It's noisy. It smells all. Everybody knows who did it.
Everybody knows.
That's right. It's overt.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. They feel the impact. They see it. They taste it. It's overt.
Right.
And he said, if you let out a silent but deadly on the elevator, keep your face straight. Everybody, the impact is there. Everyone's coughing. It's very bad. But they're all looking at each other suspiciously. They don't know.
Yeah.
It's covert. And then, clandestine is you have a perfectly balanced diet. All your biomes are in sync or whatever, and nobody even knows you farted.
Mm-hmm.
Clandestine, yeah,
that's great.
I love it.
That's it
for the Army guy. It was the only explanation that stuck early on.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And the other thing that you can kind of layer into this between covert and clandestine is you could also say the best thing you could do is blame it on somebody to cast doubt. And what you do is you pick the ugliest person in the elevator that looks like they were the one that farted, and you're like, "Whoa, dude!
Come on, bro!
Whoa,
you hit your buddy.
Yeah. Now you're speaking my language.
It's funny. Yeah, no, there's so many facets to it, but I think that at the end of the day, all the tools to solve all the problems we have are built into our Constitution.
Sure.
Requires participation. Mm-hmm. It's a participation system. Every individual person feels powerless right now.
Yeah.
Which is why they need to find tribe that's not a hyper partisan, because there's enough normal people in this country to fix all of these things.
There really
by
is.
Voting people out and voting good people in.
Using the system. I was reading Joe Rogan had posted something yesterday about how some MIT computer had forecasted the death of civilization by 2040.
Right.
And I was thinking about this in the context of the American government system. And when we look at Rome, for instance, there's a lot of direct correlation between what happened in the collapse and the fall of Rome, what happens in any collapse in organization in society, which is they start to focus on things that
are preposterous.
They're preposterous. They're irrelevant.
Yes.
We're still at a time, and that's the thing. We can't completely focus on our genitalia just yet. Guys, we can't just make the entire national conversation about
we should leave that to the Mars people.
Yeah. Leave that for maybe 2 or 3 generations from now,
right?
Because we really have shit we got to do.
Serious problems.
We can't. Yeah, we have serious problems. Can we delay that? I'm not saying it's not important once you've kind of stabilized an international society where they're not going to want to invade neighboring countries and possibly nuke them.
Maybe where Europe is defending itself, considering their GDP that's twice the size of Russia's.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or maybe what we could do is we could wait in a time frame in what I would say is organized civilization or human civilization where we're further away from throwing shit at each other, right? Than closer. We're closer to throwing shit at each other than we are as a human race than we are further. And what that means is we have to evolve a little bit more. There has to be a organized attempt to educating the world So we can all speak in kind of roughly the same logic and form before we start to take on the technical and philosophical differences between how we want to be identified as like a furry or a lamp or whatever the fuck they want to. Like, we still have legitimate problems we have to work on. The Ukraine invasion, I think, has proven to me so many different things that I already knew, because I think there's a lot of guys out there, to your point, which I try to be apolitical on new issues. I try to just really be as center as I can. And what happens though is I start to shift and pivot more conservative after I start to do the research. And some people could say, well, you're only doing your research within your community, right? You're only reading the things that are available to you from Google. I'm like, not really, man. I read a story this morning.
Well, if you're seeking out different inputs.
It's fairly easy. It's like, I read a story today from the New Yorker. Last night I was reading something from CNBC. It's kind of all over. It's I'm not just listening in my own echo chamber. I kind of like go out. The guy that wrote the story on us from the New York Times.
Oh yeah, right.
I still talk to him.
Yeah,
like he and I don't see the world. We see the world very drastically differently most of the time, I would imagine. But you know what? We can sit down and have a beer and talk about problems and agree that there are a lot of different problems that we can reprioritize in our society and talk about those. He might not agree with me and I might not agree with him, but you know what we can do? We can just like sit at the same table.
Yes.
Like I think there's a loss. I'll use this word because that also highlights this. I used nuance.
Yeah.
And I was accused of using a leftist term. Nuance. Like, so now we have words that are either left or right. Is that what we're doing now?
So,
we're limiting.
Pretty sure they canceled that in Spanish anyway.
Right?
Yeah. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. The marketplace of ideas, right? The marketplace of ideas is the key to free speech. And depending on what side you're on, you're aggressively trying to limit the speech of other people.
Right.
And like that is never going to be me. One of the groups that I coach and developed, so like I still go to my alma mater and I put on lobbying training for student government folks who are like generally advocates.
Right.
I mean, it's an urban university. Most of these kids are
what
left
university
of center.
Was it?
University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
So they're mostly left of center. Sure. But the thing is, I want to connect them to how to solve problems objectively and effectively, because them screaming into the void does not solve problems and in fact leads people to that radicalization. And I'll give you a vignette here that really kind of additionally put me down this path. You know, I had just gotten into the student veteran education advocacy piece. And this guy calls me and says, "Hey, we're going to go protest in Madison." And I was like, "Oh shit. Okay, what about?" And he's like, "Well, they're going to make graduate student tuition remittance taxable." So like part of the shell game of higher education is they don't grad students don't pay tuition, they just pay them like slave wages to teach their classes for them, right?
Yep.
And so but they're going to make that remittance taxable.
Wow.
Which is fucked up. And in Wisconsin, our Wisconsin GI Bill is tuition remittance.
Right.
And I was like, "Oh wow, this is a very legitimate issue." Yeah. And I'm like, "Now is this this was like some union group." And I was like, "Now, I feel like this is maybe a federal issue though." And they were like, "Well, we're going to go protest in Madison, the state capital." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Well, they're like, do you want to come?" And I'm like, no, but I'll try to help you figure this out. And so I'm like, "What congressmen or senators have you talked to yet?" And they're like, "Well, none." And I'm like, but you're like policy advocates. Like this is how the government, like, yeah. I'm figuring out as I go how the government works. I'm like I've been driving to Madison and DC during the week, right? Much to my wife's chagrin, to like go talk to these people and learn how this works so I can solve problems. So I'm like, "Oh, that's fine. I'll send out some emails. I'll make some calls." I assumed as an education issue that Democrats are going to be excited tripping over themselves to solve this problem.
Right.
Nobody wanted to talk to me, no positions, no statements. And I was like, that's so friggin' weird. I just moved into a new congressional district. I was like, oh, I have a new congressman. I'll call that guy. All right, I sent him an email. Like 15 minutes later, my cell phone rings. It's Congressman Grothman. He's a absolute character. And he's just like, explain this to me. Explain the impacts. And I'm like, run him through it, cliff notes. And he's like, what do you want me to do about it? And I was like, I don't know. Can you like delete it? The language from the bill? I don't know. And he's just like, all right, I'll get on convergence committee and I'll make it happen. And then he's like, okay, bye. And he hangs up. And I'm just like, well, that's crazy. So I like send him the email recap.
Right.
As per our conversation, he sends me like, yep, back. And then he did it. He went, I think Paul Ryan was still, and he went and probably bullied Paul Ryan into getting into convergence, and he deleted the language, which, the far ranging impacts of that were massive, because I literally just took the time to call around until I found someone who cared about that.
Right.
But then the student union guys call me back and they're like, hey, so you come to this protest? And I was like, well, actually, man, this congressman is like he's doing it. He's like, he's fixing it. And he sent me confirmation that he's doing it. His office backed it up. And they're like, isn't that guy a Republican? And I was like, yeah, that's weird, right? I guess he just really cares about higher education.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, we're going to go protest in Madison. I'm like, for what? So all the people that support their work are going to be mad, or worse, think that it worked.
Yeah.
When these people who can't even take the time to learn how the system works to solve real problems. But so that would be an example of me working in, I guess, the center left space and solving problems. And so that's why I try to stay objective. It's why I don't burn bridges with people who ideologically are different than me, because I would consider that a conservative outcome.
Right.
Right? The way to fix higher education is not to put additional burden onto students who are suffering from a broken system.
Right.
Right? I don't know. But people don't want to do that, because then they'd have to talk to people who disagree with them. They don't really want to.
Well, I think that's really interesting, because I think there's a lot of people, to include myself, I would say, up to a certain point in my life, they don't really understand the system.
Right.
I think if we're a federally subsidized education system, there should be a significant amount of education that is geared towards educating, I would say, the teens as to how the government actually works. I've always been kind of a political junkie. So for me, it was relatively easy. I was a poli-sci guy too, so it was really easy for me. But there's a lot of people, I don't know if you're old enough to remember. You remember the McLaughlin Hour? Did you ever watch that? Yeah, it's like a debate show.
Okay.
They have like 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. They constantly debate. That's what they just take on. They talk
issue of the day.
Take on the issue of the day, and they just go back and forth. And it was great, but not too many juniors in high school were watching that. You know what I mean?
Right.
That wasn't happening. So I've always kind of taken an interest in this because it's interesting to me. But if we have to force feed people, it might be better, because it is a federally subsidized system.
Right.
And I don't even know if we teach social studies or civics anymore, because I think it's been replaced with gobbledygook.
Right.
So they can either, increase their general, GPA, because they're like, well, this year, what we're going to do is we're going to do color identification. Right. Like that's going to be your class. Like pink is pink, right? Look at that pink. Okay. Tell me what color this is. This is like senior level stuff before they're prepping for SATs. Because there's like that entire conversation around people just eliminating grades too. So people shouldn't be graded. They should just get a piece of paper.
It's a logical evolution of gaming a system, right? I mean, it's like there's a system built. Like if you want to go to the best college, you used to just have to have a stellar grade point average. Now you need the stellar grade point average plus the SAT. Plus you need to be the CEO and founder of like 4 high school nonprofits.
Right.
Plus you need like the diversity index. I think I saw, I'm trying to remember the article. They said like the amount of students that are like applying for college and are identifying as various minority types, like mathematically exceeds the amount that exists.
Right.
And everyone's like shocked and surprised by this, but you've created a system that this is the way that everyone is being told you have to move up. And so people adapt to it because human beings are creatures of adaptation.
Right. Well, I feel bad because was that Harvard that was openly discriminating against Asian children? Was that Harvard or Princeton?
Yeah, it was Harvard.
It was both, right? Yeah. Like
performance is too high.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Which I feel bad because I was going to have my kids identify as Asian. And then once I found that out, I'm like, well, you're not going to get into an Ivy League school. So
back to 23andMe.
Yeah.
It's like figure out what else we got on deck.
You got some Ashkenazi in you. So I think this is what we're going to have to roll with, kiddos. And maybe we'll get you into the University of Jerusalem. I'm not sure. But, I mean...
But like you, to your earlier point, we're focused on all these things instead of being concerned about our participation in the fundamental systems that can correct course for us economically, socially, culturally. We're caught up in these fire of the day things.
But I can't help but think the conspiracy, not like. I love conspiracies just in general because it's kind of like mind candy. You can't eat it all the time; you're going to get fat as fuck. But once in a while, it's kind of nice, right? It's interesting, yeah. So, but I can't help but think, but the conspiracy is not a sophisticated system to really unwind and go, that's the conspiracy. I got it. No. So if you look at anybody like Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi or who's the Republican side? Mitch McConnell.
Right.
Like it's not hard to figure out.
No.
So Mitch McConnell controls the largest super PAC. Like the largest. He has $400 million that he gets to press the buttons on anytime he wants to. He's the fucking kingmaker. Why is he still in power? He's the kingmaker, man.
That's right.
Why is Pelosi still in power? She is the kingmaker. They're the rainmakers.
They've methodically and incrementally increased and consolidated power.
Power, and they've consolidated power through their ability to control capital and then disperse capital to the people that they want to ultimately control for whether it's a political agenda or personal. But most of the time, it's a personal agenda, which they try to skew.
Right.
Political, where they're like, I'm really just concerned with this. No, there's no reason why these people are still in office.
I'm actually just a better day trader than Warren Buffett.
Yeah. Just better. There's no reason why they're still in office.
It's rough.
They are so fucking old.
Right.
There's no... These people that are still in office, like whether it's a Biden or a Pelosi or a McConnell or any one of these people, they're so fucking old. They need to be put on a mantle. Like they need to be like, this is wood that needs to be petrified and turned into a fucking chair. I don't know, but they're so old. There's no way you can tell me.
Well, they're totally disconnected, and I think, I mean, indisputably, when the worst downstream second, third order effects of their selfish decisions are experienced, they're not going to be around to feel the pain.
They're not going to be around in 10 years.
Right.
Like they're not going to be here. So when they're thinking about the future and to your point, the second and third order effects of their decision making, when they don't care, they're rich,
right?
They're connected, and they don't give a shit. They're legitimately cognitively declining, sociopathic assholes. That's what they are.
Well, but people,
are you laughing over there?
People also don't think that what we have is fragile, which is its own.
It's crazy.
Which is its own danger. I mean, because we have seen what happens when everything is broken. We've seen what those places look like, right?
And we've seen
how many generations have we essentially been safe, growing in prosperity, comfortable relative to the rest of the world.
Humans are so interesting. Within like 2 or 3 generations, they can just like forget shit. It's amazing, right? It's just like if we just went around, we're like, well, how did World War I start? How did World War II start? What are we seeing right now in the Ukraine? This is a slippery slope. Like to me, it's really easy for us, like from my personal perspective, to look at historical consequences and how easy it is for us to be able to decline as a society and then find ourselves in a big global catastrophe like a war. It's really easy. The pandemic is another great example. So as we looked at the pandemic, look at how much propaganda was out there.
Right.
Like we're going to shut down our entire national economy. We're going to be less competitive internationally. We're going to all walk around with fucking pieces of shirt on our face and pretend like it fucking works. Right. Because we have to pretend.
Yes.
Because we're living in a pretend.
Yes, it is.
It's theatrics.
Heavily theatric. It all. I mean, it's like, I think somebody called it like the MAGA hat of the other team.
Yeah,
something.
That's what it was, right? Yeah.
But to your point, with the Ukraine thing, it's very fascinating because like Vladimir Putin is the bad guy.
Yeah.
This is indisputable.
Indisputable.
And yet, anyone who urges caution to, for example, the U.S. military shooting down his planes, right, is like, well, you're a Putin sympathizer.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, no, he's the bad guy. He's absolutely the bad guy. But the thing is, why is Ukraine right now vital to our strategic national interests, but it wasn't in 2014 when Russia soft invaded them and has been fighting there ever since.
Right.
But 2 weeks ago, it suddenly became part of our national interest. And it's not. And this idea that it's like a defense welfare state where we're like, oh, Europe, don't worry. We'll just be your army.
Right.
At a cost. I mean, we're between VA and DOD, we're closing on $1 trillion in defense and peripheral defense spending, right? And caring for the people who carry the rucksack of those policies. And Europe has the means to put together an army. And maybe there's a place for us to help train or, things we've done very effectively, right? Things that we are good at. But I saw an immediate reaction by Ukraine's neighbors. All these European countries took relatively swift action.
They did.
And that was an example, that was an organic example of allied burden sharing. It was in their backyard. They should be invested in it, right? I mean, they make the friggin', who makes AT-4? That's Swedish, right? Goose. Yeah, they make the friggin' AT missiles there.
Yeah, you're right.
Why ship them over here to have us buy them and send them? Send them the missiles you're making. You guys have everything you need to protect the sovereignty of the countries in your region, and you have a responsibility to. Ukraine's got obviously an inherent right to self-defense, but this, I think there's a lot of strings pulling there that want to see us building bases all over Europe again, having Cold War II electric Boogaloo so that we can,
That's awesome. Cold War II, the electric Boogaloo. But I'm going to make that t-shirt. Right, Cold War II, the electric Boogaloo.
Dude, fuck off. But and don't get me wrong, I would have loved a sweet Europe tour at some point in the army instead of Afghanistan over and over again. We have a lot of problems here that those resources, we have a broken procurement system, right? We have so much to fix internally. I don't think the Defense Department wants a peacetime period because then they're going to have to look internally and say, how do we fix this? The budget hasn't gone down since we ended Afghanistan.
Which is insane.
It's insane.
It's insane. I want to stay on Ukraine for a little bit longer because it's really interesting. If you look at from my perspective, you're 100% accurate. This is a European problem which needs to be fought from the European perspective. They need to start paying their bills. When we look at what is it? The allocated amount per GDP is what, 2% or something like that, right?
For NATO, yeah.
Right. But this is a NATO issue, and whether
it's an EU issue,
it's EU,
which includes
also
NATO,
correct?
Right.
So it's not our issue, and when I say it's partially our interest, which becomes a subset of our issue, but it's partial interest subset issue.
Right.
It's their fucking issue.
Because we've got NATO allies who we have committed to defend. And another thing that's irking me, and this is a little wonky, man, but everyone's like, well, we promised to defend Ukraine. No, we didn't.
No, we didn't.
Never. The 1994 Budapest Agreement was between Russia, us, and Ukraine to get nuclear missiles out of there. It didn't mention anything about military support or defense. It's not in there. I've read it. It's not in there. And neither Bill Clinton or George Bush Sr. sent it to the Senate to be ratified. So it's not even a real agreement. It's not a real treaty. The American people have made no commitment through our constitutional process to that country. And it's not, and I'm not even saying in this statement that let's say Ukraine was in our national interest. Then why, since 1994, has nobody taken the time and expended the political capital to sign an agreement with them?
Right.
Because they're not truly in our strategic national interest. We don't want Russia expanding and invading their neighbors. We don't. So we should be supportive of European efforts to raise and build and train and fund a military that can defend their region, because they face true physical threats to their existence, right? Mm-hmm. And we can do that they can do that, and we can be supportive of that in a way that's constitutionally appropriate. But we're not doing that, and we're not interested in that. And there are certain people, future former Congress people on the Bird app, know, who are like, we need a no-fly zone. We know, get in there and shoot some jets down. But like, have you proposed a declaration of war? Because that's what that is.
Right.
That's a declaration of war. And these are not actions that should be taken lightly. These are not actions that should be debated behind closed doors. They need public, rigorous debate so that the American people can decide, do we want our sons and daughters to bleed for this? Because they will. They will bleed for this. We get to decide if it's worth it. Not Joe Biden, right? Not Donald Trump. Now, whoever's president,
sure,
they don't get to decide that. But this precedent of Congress ignoring their war powers duty is the danger, right? Because it's become the norm. And that's why I think at its core, compelling them to get reengaged, like, war powers reforms that require it to be reauthorized by name, by member every 2 years along with the defense budget. That's how you get these people engaged.
Right.
So that, so they face the consequences for their actions.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're to roll back the clock and look at it from Iraq, from an invasion perspective, would you call that a justified invasion?
So, I never served there. I loosely educated. I think there were problems with how that case was presented. But I would argue that because they had to vote on it, like 80% of those guys and gals who voted for that war got thrown out of office.
Yep.
There was the mechanism for accountability existed because they had to vote for it. And so, yeah, it was bad that they got lied to about stuff or misled or whatever, but they were held accountable. Now, one would have hoped that in going forward, the change of behavior would have been, I'm going to dig more into this shit before I get engaged. But we saw the opposite happen. We saw relinquishment of responsibility and accountability, pass the buck upwards to the people who have enough capital at their disposal to weather the storm of being the bad guy over and over again, every single year, every single session, regardless.
Right. Yeah, I think about it now because as I look at Ukraine, I look at the situation in Ukraine, and then I look at step one, I look at this as primarily a European problem, which means it requires a European solution. Two, secondarily, the focus has to be aligning our interests around real strategic threats, not our strategic threats are not the Taliban in Afghanistan, guys. Like just so you know that they can't mount a land invasion and take away our sovereignty. It's not possible. Strategic means what can people do specifically to our country that jeopardize our sovereignty, not scare us. That's terrorism. Difference. Big difference. So you have primarily you've got four main countries in the world that I would say deteriorate our strategic interests and that we have to be very concerned with in combating their interests. So China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. And as we look at this, you have to pull apart the entire, we'll call it network, and look at who is participating and directly contributing to their success as a nation. So when we look at economic sanctions, when we look at military intervention, there's a cascading effect that we have to align as a nation around what are our primary focus is going to be. How do we protect the nation? How do we maintain sovereignty? And that also means economic sovereignty.
Right.
We all have to agree. China and Russia are bad. Even if you just want to go like white cowboy hat, black cowboy hat. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, right.
But it's pretty easy.
Right.
The other point that one of my friends was making, which I thought was like really interesting, is that as a United States military, as a service member, if we have a spouse that's doing business in China, you have to, not only do you have to identify that, you have to disclose it. You have to, you're supposed to. Your SF-86, when you're filling out your SF-86. But if you're in special operations, like, man, if you talk to a Russian, if you just talk to a Russian, you got to put in a contact form. You got a time and place. So we've had members of Congress that are sleeping with Chinese citizens.
Who are specifically connected to the intelligence machine.
Directly connected to the intelligence machine. So when we look at there, we all kind of have to agree on a set of rules as to who our real enemy is or enemies are. And then we have to say, everybody's got to play by the same rules. We have to be able to say, as a society, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, we just don't play nice with each other.
Yes.
So that doesn't mean we have to be complete isolationists. It just means like, hey, let's identify these kind of core countries, figure out exactly the way that we're going to communicate and live with them.
And work around them.
And work around them.
Right, correct.
Right. Marginalize their interests abroad, make sure that we're...
Be a better partner economically. I mean, that's like, again, there are so many tools. We're so like reactionary, we want to come in after something is imploding instead of looking, because, we have a political machine that looks barely 6 months in advance, let alone 10-year, 20-year plan of like, let's be a better partner in this region economically. Let's figure out how we can encourage U.S. firms to, have talent exchange or goods or services exchange with these countries so that we can give them a taste of that better life. Like, for example, you look at Iran, I think the education of Iranian students, the educational exchange in America is probably one of the greatest soft power tools to change them long-term and make them more aligned with free society, right?
Yeah.
Because they see what it's like. They get a taste for it, and freedom tastes fucking good, man.
Yeah, it tastes so good.
It's really great.
Like once you go free, you don't go back. That's what I mean.
I don't say that, but...
I don't say that very often, but when I do... No. Well, COVID did this for me. It really showed everybody's cards. It did. Like, it showed everybody's cards. When I would go to Washington or California or any of these other states prior to COVID, there was always that underlying... There's a little bit of, you guys are fucking retarded. Right? There's a little bit of like, you guys are a little bit fucking crazy. Yeah. You're out there, right? Retarded in the purest sense. I'm not saying mentally ill. I'm saying directly opposing to the normal.
Yeah,
right? So,
1992.
Yeah. So, but what COVID did is it showed us just how fucking crazy some of these people are because they locked their cities down.
Right.
And when you're going to a red state because you need freedom, everybody in that state should be really taking a look and holding everyone accountable.
It's like tar and feather time, man.
It's crazy.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I feel like I would get my ass kicked for that. You know, it'd be like if I was like, dude, I don't like drinking with my army bros, man. These guys play too rough. We're always getting in fights. You know, I always end up with like a bloody lip or something because we're, horsing around. I was at McCord or JBLM. So I'm like, I'm gonna go party with the McCord guys. I'm just like, come back doing like the walk of shame from like the Air Force side of the fence. Dude, I get my ass kicked for that.
Yeah.
But like, we Wisconsin, it's a split state. So like, it was like draconian top down.
Yeah.
And then like we, continuously fighting to unlock the state. But like, I think it was like the Illinois governor was just like partying, mask off. Like he literally banned interstate travel from his state and then came to Wisconsin to party.
Right.
And I mean, obviously the West Coast was full of examples like that. But the concerning part to me was the sheer volume of people who not only were willing to throw away their liberty for a paper-thin blanket veneer of security, but would actually take militant action to take other people's for the same thing. That was concerningly successful.
Yeah, it didn't take much. No. This wasn't even. No offense to anyone that thought that this was a really a very scary event. I know what scary events are. This just wasn't one.
For some people, I'm sure it was, man.
For some people, because they've lost family members. But what I'm referring to is a significant percentage loss of life. And I'm not saying that every life is not precious. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying when we're looking at if we increased the death rate to healthy, fighting age men and women both, if we increase that to 50%, that's a different story.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That's utter annihilation of the society. Nightmare fuel. It's a nightmare because now you're deteriorating your ability to have a successful workforce and defense force. So when you're looking at
the next generation, right?
Yeah. And growing a next generation, like being able to successfully procreate and generate, and backfill.
Build businesses, everything. Everything.
But this, what it was, okay, we got to wash our hands. And we have to be a little bit more careful to make sure that we're not spreading things. Take logical, common sense solutions. But when I have governors that have a lower education than I do, telling me that a piece of t-shirt cloth will block a virus, it's bullshit. Not only do you know it's bullshit, you know that they're lying.
Right.
Because you know that they have access to the information that tells them it directly otherwise. And
it was inherently political, but the political was because it was presidential election.
Correct.
And that was built into the platform of one party. And so like it was canon. And no one was allowed to disagree from the media on down. And the damage, I mean, just look, and I think my wife and I were talking about it very early on. Because we laid low at the house for quite some time because we had the means. We were able to work remotely. Yeah. And it seemed because we had the means to, sure, maybe we should do that. But even like in the first month, we're just like, okay, so there's people with these comorbidities that are at a really high risk rate. Why didn't we simply ask those people to quarantine so that the greatest economy humanity has ever known could continue to chug along and provide for those high-risk people while they laid low, while we sorted this shit out. Instead, we destroyed everything for an election, man.
For an election.
In my opinion.
Well, I mean, the data is out that every one of our precautions that we took didn't prevent this from spreading. So all of them, so whether it's a mask, even the lockdown, because people were moving, or there was enough mobility, whether that was like direct economic mobility in the sense of people were moving for work and they were participating in group events, whether that's family or work, that there was still enough mobility that the virus would spread just as actively as it could if we hadn't taken any. And when I say it's like, I don't know if the percentages are direct, but they're really close.
Yeah. And I got vaccinated because kind of a fat ass. I got health issues from the military. I'm sure it's whatever, it's burn pits or whatever, who cares? Yeah. But I was like, well, yeah, I'm done having kids. My wife was pregnant.
Right.
And I was like, I should probably do this.
She still fucks you, which is good.
It's also
so
good.
You're not too fat, right?
still in the safe zone. In Wisconsin, we get a little more wiggle room than you guys out here in the mountain states for sure, man.
So fucked up.
She's great. She's how
many kids do you guys have?
4 now.
Crap.
She's rolled up for some Ukraine adjacent duties. So she's
what's she do professionally?
She was a middle school teacher. You'll like this. She's a middle school special ed teacher for about 10 years. She had wanted to join the military, maybe go to like Annapolis or something like that out of high school. It's 2004. Her parents were like, no, there's a war, you should you always wanted to be a teacher. Well, then she ends up with me. Right. And everyone who comes to our barbecues are all these like crusty ass, even the women are like crusty ass combat vets.
Right.
And after my third tour, we had a big party and she was just like, man, I really wish I tried. And I was like, whoa, hold the fucking phone. Just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
I was just do it. And she's like, what do you mean just do it? I said, just join. Cause like you've met the old timers. You can tell they've been saying that shit on loop for half a century. Yeah. And frankly, I just don't want to hear it for the next 50 years. And so I was like, just do it,
Yeah.
And she's like, you're going to raise all these kids and go to college and do all that. You're fine. I'm like, yeah, dude, how hard could it be? You did it while I was in Afghanistan.
Cakewalk.
Oh my God. It was so bad, dude. It was so bad. I was like, geez, send me back to Afghanistan. I mean, not now, but I was like, this is hard. I was like, how do you function like this? Dude, it's so hard. I mean, it was good for me to see the other side, because obviously I think I've admittedly been overly flippant with the triceratops type rhetoric. And now look at me, I am the Navy wife.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So
what's she do? What's her name?
She's a Intel analyst. So that's her area. So I'm really proud of her, man. I'm really excited for her. But she's like, I'm a 30-year-old middle school special ed teacher. I can't join the military. I said, dude, what do you think an Army staff sergeant was? Right. I literally drug around like 11 guys with intellectual handicaps and tried to keep them from killing each other. Yeah. So you're already good to go.
Yeah.
She's flying, man. She's screaming through. She's thoroughly embarrassed me with her promotion ability already. Good. So I'm super proud of her. We're excited to have her back down the road. But
so has she just been gone? Is this a recent thing?
Yeah, very recent.
Oh, so, right on.
Yeah, so I'm proud. I'm excited. She gets to like get into something that's a historical event, man. Yeah, that's crazy. No, she's the coolest. She's a saint, man.
So what do you do? What do you do? Like, what do you do now?
What's up? Own a consulting business, which is now like incubating a tech startup. I'm really excited about. When we go to launch, I'll come back on and talk about it. Otherwise, my tech guys will rip my fucking nuts out.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I'm a Luddite and I'm doing a tech startup, so that's because that's what you do.
Yeah. That's exactly what you do.
And then I do advocacy work in the veteran space. Concerned Vets for America. Try to partner with other groups and just find like interesting solutions to problems in policy, public policy at the federal level, occasionally at the state level. It's so bad, man. Here's another thing. So a whole bunch of veterans groups recently, I mean, they have put so much work into this burn pit stuff, right?
Yeah. We do a lot with Hunter 7 stuff.
It's awesome, but like structurally, do you ever think about how weird it is that every single veteran organization has to expend real and massive political capital every time a singular ailment needs to be added to what the VA will care for, while the VA simultaneously is, sabotaging things like community care access. They've added all these like requirements that are illegal. They're in violation of the law because they want to protect their monopoly of healthcare, right? Even to the detriment of veterans. But it's like no other agency The Congress doesn't care about policy from any other agency. They just let unelected bureaucrats write all the meta.
Right.
But for anything VA, they force all of these really great organizations run by extremely compassionate, hardworking vets to fight for years for incremental improvements. Why do we have to fight over things that were a result of your wartime service?
Right.
Why is that a fight at all? And it's like, it feels like as it goes on and I see more of it, like it feels like they put us in this place where like they're handing these things that should have been automatic to us years down the line after untold amounts of people have died. I mean, look at the Blue Water Navy stuff, right?
Right.
It's like 70% of those guys have already died. And then they're like, oh, now it's real.
Right.
You're welcome. And Congress is like, look what we did. Look what we did for you. Look what we did for you.
Yeah.
See what we did for you?
Right.
And I don't, there has to be a conversation about that because like so many veteran organizations are like trapped into this system of like, well, the VA has got like almost $300 billion. And so if you want to help vets, you need to play nice with the VA because that's where the trickle down comes from. That's where the money comes from, and that's put a lot of people and organizations in this bad mental model of like, I have to ask the VA to do it. I have to ask the Congress to ask the VA to do it. And it's, I don't know what the road forward is there, but something has to change there. We can't just keep letting these people incrementally fix wildly broken systems and then congratulate themselves for it. But that's the trap we're stuck in, and it's kind of like, and this is a thing we talk about in Wisconsin. There's a tendency sometimes for when there's bad policy, veterans are like, okay, this is hurting vets and their families. We got to fix this. And legislators will be like, okay, we'll exempt veterans and their families from it. And we're like, oh, thank God. But it shifts the burden onto our neighbors.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fix the problem.
Right.
And then sometimes they'll say, oh, we'll come back and we'll fix it for everybody else later.
No.
But they don't. And so I think there's a space for veterans to lead. It's a volunteer military, all volunteer military. It's the most reflective, demographically reflective body in the country, right? I mean, it's the only time like Salon or, Mother Jones or somebody will say something nice about the military. It's like how diverse we are.
Right.
And I think there's a place for us to lead the charge for meaningful reforms in everything, economic, business, education, but fixing them for everybody, right?
Right.
So that, and I think for me, that's been more fulfilling because I feel like I'm still doing that selfless service, right? And sometimes it trends into self-service. And there's a lot of implications, I think, for the veteran community, right? Like we're running on a blank check that was written on 9/11 right now. But support for that is finite. And I think it's important to think about that with the things we expend political capital on, right?
Yeah, you're right. The check that was written will not last. I mean, right. And that's the other thing that I think at least one of the primary solutions that we can unite as a veteran community around is getting veterans elected. So that I've really tried to get a lot of veterans on the show, tried to push a lot of veterans as far as this is who they are. This is who they are politically, like them or not like them. What they can't speak to is veteran-related issues. That's one of the reasons why I like Tulsi. That's one of the reasons why I like Joe Kent out in Washington and some of these other people, Tony Cowden out in North Carolina. They can speak to the issues, and I think they can have a very specific conversation around not only veterans-related issues, but then how do we speak to our civilian counterparts within our nation as to how important these things are. There's no reason, when I say there's no reason, the years that I either spent in Iraq or Afghanistan, there's just no reason why we don't have some type of underlying system that at least explores to make sure that the burn pits, for a lack of a continuing definition in this, if they had a direct health impact we need to have a cross-reference of direct data that we can pull from everybody that is being seen in the VA system to see if there's a connection between burn pits. Not, we're going to have to fund all this shit and then shove it down their throats.
But, and that's, you kind of touched on another problem where the onus to receive care and to navigate this wildly complex bureaucratic nightmare is continuously placed on the veteran.
Yes.
Right? Like we have people who their clinician will refer them to, community mental health care. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a female service member who suffered, from military sexual trauma, doesn't feel comfortable getting leered at the VA by a bunch of old timers and wants to go to a normal hospital, right? Extremely legitimate, fits all the definitions, and her referral gets denied. Nobody says, hey, here's why your referral got denied.
No, you just
nobody says, here's how you appeal this. Nobody says, here's an advocate to help you navigate this system, right? Mm-hmm. The onus, and we all come from an institutionalization where you don't get to question or appeal the bureaucracy.
No.
There's not a mechanism for it. It's no, and that's it.
You have to have, but that's the other thing is you have to have an advocate. So especially if you have an issue, you have to find a medical or a VA advocate. We did this with, I think, a few different early on shows. We tell people, this is the office that you need to communicate through in this state.
Love that.
And there's every one of the states has VA advocates. Yep. Every one of them can walk you through the paperwork. Every one of them can help you navigate the system. I did it with mine. They were debating. I was debating on, with a nurse as to, she was like, well, why do you have, 60% hearing loss in your right ear? I'm like, what did you do before you joined the Army? I was like, I was in college. I've never had another job. I've never had another. Well, have you used heavy machinery? I was like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure I've used it. Could have been directly contributed. I'm like, my shooting side is right side.
Right.
Correlation. Yeah. I used to always pull one cup up.
Because you can get the cheek weld. Yeah.
And I'd pull one cup so I could listen to the radio too.
Yeah.
Because you can't listen to a radio. And I'm a comms guy. So I'd always have one cup all the time.
I wonder why you had all these cool radios.
It's interesting why it's my right ear.
Just that one,
don't you think? Well, I don't know. Have you ever run a chainsaw? Or do you like to listen to loud music? I'm like, hey dude, that's not what this is from. I've had one basic job my entire life.
Yeah.
And it's from that. The perpetual ringing and loss of hearing is from this. I don't know. My first one was denied. My first I need a hearing aid.
Right.
I'm 44 years old. I don't know a whole lot of other 44-year-old males that need a fucking hearing aid. And it's getting worse, by the way. I'll be sitting in the living room. My wife will be talking to me. I'm like, I have no fucking clue what you just said. I have no clue. Maybe that's psychosomatic. Maybe I'm just
selective.
Maybe it's selective hearing. I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
That's Battalion Channel. Just turn that off.
Yeah, just turn that off. Squelch that out. Just gonna squelch that out.
It's funny.
But you all need them. And my buddy, Logan, everybody knows Logan. Yeah. Logan's used it. JT's used it. Everybody's used one. So it's the other thing is they don't want to seek out help, right? I'm going to do this on my own. And it's like, yo, dude, when did you ever just do shit on your own in the military? You always had help.
True.
There was always an office you had to go to with a file, and the person behind the desk, they would have to explain to you how you do direct deposit or whatever the hell it was.
Your ETS move is the only one where there's not some guy dragging you from S shop to S shop. All right, get in here, asshole. Yeah. Stamp your shit. All right, give them the things you need to sign. All right, you got to be back here tomorrow to turn these in. It's the only time it doesn't happen, and there's no preparation for it.
No preparation.
I had a similar experience. I was VA when I was getting out, and I was trying to sign up for VA healthcare. And they were like, "Oh, we got to do disability claim." So what hurts? And I'm just like, you know, I don't know, like, I guess a few things and like some other stuff. And it's like, it came back like, and I got like the 0% no service connection. And I was like, dude, I had like 168 late days of leave accrued when I got out. When do you think this happened? Like, I didn't even take vacation in the Army, bro. Like, I wasn't doing anything. I went from like high school to this. And that's when I went back to Afghanistan because they were like, do you have any medical issues? Nope.
I'm all good.
And then there I am, when I'm getting ready for mid-tour leave, I'm calling the Milwaukee VA and I'm like, I need to talk to somebody because I am having a hard time. I'm going to be back in Wisconsin in 3 months. Here's the window. I need an appointment. And they were like, oh, sorry, bro. We can't fit you in that time. So just come back after your deployment.
Yeah.
And like, and I think if it had been a couple deployments prior to that when I didn't have kids, I don't know how that would have gone.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so fortunate, and I came back, I got connected to some other groups of, vets who have other like healthcare options and stuff like that. And I was able to get what I needed. But it was very interesting. And I spent about an hour on the phone with a guy maybe a month ago. It's one of my old volunteers, who's in a kind of crisis moment. And this guy was like, he's like, well, I called I spent 10 years too scared to call the VA crisis line because I thought the cops would come and take my guns.
Right.
And it turns out I didn't have to be afraid about anything because nobody came.
Yeah. Of course.
We got to fucking fix these things.
Yeah. And I think that's why as the community and the further away we get away from the wars, the more we're going to have to build the communities, whether they're on social media, whether they're, that is the good thing about social media, right? So I can talk in one of my special forces group, chat groups or whatever, talk to a bunch of SF guys, like thousands of them.
With the best memes.
Like, I can say, that's right, I am a cook or whatever, right? Like in my special forces group,
right?
Or whatever. But that is the nice thing about social media is we have the ability to organize. So we can talk to each other. We can talk to each other about problems. We can reach out to people like you if you're in the Milwaukee area, or you're also on Twitter because that's where I found you.
That's right. That's true. It's at Real Sam Rogers. I have the worst takes. I'm sorry. Please. And I like yourself know people all around the country. Yeah. And so it's, if I work best as a super connector, right? I don't have all the best. I even really have many good ideas, but I have. but I know people smarter than me, right?
Yeah.
And I am the spirit of a support guy, and like I know when like I can handle something and add value, and when I should get out of the way, and I don't know. Building communities is crucial. It's something that happened organically for us in Wisconsin, and then that we called it Margaritas with Veterans. It started out as like a mandate between me and this other vet bro I met at college. Right. And then someone was like, oh, you guys are getting margaritas? Can I fucking come?
Right.
And then within like 3 months, it was like 50 people would show up to this Mexican place.
Seriously?
Yes. And like they had these half-gallon margaritas and we drank so fucking many of them, they would have to like buy more cups.
Oh, that's great.
And so then I started inviting veteran service organizations. And I'm like, listen, this isn't a change of command. You have 2 minutes to tell everybody who you are and what you do. And I would just be like, hey, everybody, shut up. Like, listen to these folks. They do cool stuff for vets here. You might not need this tool, but like when you get that 3 a.m. call in like 5 months and when your boys is in trouble, these people might solve your problem.
Right.
So like hear them out, listen to them, like take it in. And then, and it was wonderful. It was fucking wonderful. I would try to bring ringers from every different type of like, I brought the jujitsu bro. I brought the golfer. I brought the 3-gun bro. I brought so that when a new guy, and we'd probably get 5 or 6 new guys at a time. And I'd be like, what do you like to do, man? Like, I don't know. Well, what do you think is fucking cool?
Right.
Oh, I want to get into fishing. Cool. Fishing, bro. Get over here.
Bro.
Hey, you guys are friends now. Touch chips. Get out of here. Be friends. And building those, all these guys are still in my bubble, and they've all it's all brought benefit to their lives. And so, I think you look around the country and you see veterans organically creating that type of thing where they assess the need and they see the opportunity.
I agree.
And it's some of the older VSOs don't, they're like, they want to try to tap into that, but some of them can't get out of their own way when it comes to that.
Yeah, you're right.
And I mean, but at the same point, it's a thing that I always said at UW Milwaukee, when guys would be bitching about whatever benefits, and I'm like, listen, just like, remember, like the guys that came before us didn't have shit. They fought for this stuff. They're the ones who got us here, and it's really important that we keep that front of mind, right? Because the things, we should not necessarily be fighting for the things just for us. We should be improving things for the next group of guys and gals.
Yeah, because if we think we're the last or the only, like, we're sadly mistaken.
Right.
And when, I believe it was World War I veterans that had a significant was a sit-in, basically, right, in Washington.
Did they roll tanks through it?
Was that
the bonus army?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. That was the bonus army.
Created the VA because, that was a draft and they didn't even give you a fucking paycheck.
Yeah,
it was like an
wild?
IOU.
Yeah.
It's like, hey guy, I need you to go put on this trench coat and gas mask and knife fight and mustard gas in a trench, with mortar fire, and then come back and sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Here's an IOU for 10 years from now or something.
Here's a fake face that you can wear around because half of yours is missing.
Right. Yeah.
Good luck.
I am truly, it's weird, like talking to Vietnam guys occasionally when I first came back, and they're just like, how do you fight with all that shit on? And I'm just like, bro, how did you fight without all that shit on? I'm going to be honest, man. I feel like, my shirt stops bullets. I can see in the dark. I can soar through the sky in a silent chariot. Like, it's not to be like, it's like, that's like, you used to read about that in like fables. Like, we have it pretty cool compared to these dudes like walking through jungle and low light, man, just like trying to smell people.
Yeah, trying to smell them.
I don't know. But, and then those guys fought to get us the benefits that we've got so far.
Yeah, a lot of those dirty hippies that were out protesting in the 60s and 70s, like they set us up pretty well. And then a lot of those guys, they joined Congress or they were elected to Congress and Senate. They ran for president. Like they affected change.
Yes.
And that's what I keep talking to this generation is like, get out, get politically active.
Participate.
It doesn't matter, man. Like get involved in your local area. Get involved in the mayor's election or the governor, your state, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But there's so many different things where we can provide a voice.
Yes.
I hear it all the time. Vets from across the United States or some actually in the world will come in through Black Rifle Coffee. I hear it all the time. This is fucked up. This is fucked up. This is fucked up. I'm like, did you get active in your like local area? Are you participating in political action in any way, shape, or form? No, I just bitch a lot on Instagram. I'm like, yeah, of course. That's not going to do anything, right? That's like shoveling the tide, dude. It doesn't do anything. For you to bitch on Instagram does nothing. But if you're going to go out and participate in the system, you can affect change. I know and it's hard. Don't get me wrong.
It's a growth challenge though, because bitching is the only tool we have while we're in. Right. You can't quit. You can't go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. You complain about it, but you have to switch because this is a participation system. It's not about who has rank.
Right.
It's about who fucking shows up. Right.
You're
That's it.
Yeah.
And for anybody who's interested in getting engaged in literally anything, man, reach out. Yeah. Like I said, I'm conservative, but like I coach a lot of folks who are center left who just want to make an actual difference and don't just want to make noise because it's unfulfilling and it doesn't bring about change.
Dude, thanks, Sam. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks so much for having me out. It was a great time.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. See you guys.